and it looks like it's time to begin. So I want to say welcome to all of you who are here. Thank you so much for being here, and welcome to another session. I feel like I should say episode. Welcome to another episode of Sitalisa'S Kitchen. So if you caught one of my internal Yammer posts that I made early on with a palm full of cacao, maybe you found yourself getting inspired around what that might be leading up to. And of course that was some many weeks back, but here we are in the cacao laboratory, and I'm ready to show you how to make chocolate. Not Hershey's chocolate, but Sitalisa'S chocolate. And I got up really early this morning, and I've been making all kinds of different chocolates for you to show you. So here we have a beautiful organic rose petal and ashwagandha chocolate bar. Here we have this is a very heavy marble tray, but here we have some bee pollen triangles, and here we have mint maca moringa, and these are beautiful little hearts. Let me show you. Beautiful little heart bonbons. So in integrative practices and in ESI, I will occasionally serve my chocolates as part of group immersion time, and sometimes people also get the opportunity to have some of this chocolate in the one-on-one work that I do. And I cannot even tell you how many times people have requested that I share how to make the chocolate. And now is just the perfect time, because we can have it recorded, and we can go back to it, and we can make it all our own. So I'm really, really excited to share some of these techniques with you, these cacao techniques. Cacao, unlike the Hershey's bar, is truly a superfood. It's incredibly rich in iron, in magnesium, in potassium, and gosh, the list is long. It's so, so good. It's got neurotransmitters that help us to experience well-being and to attain and sustain happiness. And it's just overall superfood for the human heart. And it has been something that I've been reaching for a long, long time. Maybe some of you are aware through the storytelling that I share, through this work that I do, that as a young woman, I struggled off and on for a couple of years with some chronic systemic issues and illness, and was trying from all angles to find wellness, to find balance in my biology. And what I finally unveiled, in terms of recognizing and stabilizing the fact that I, as a human being, can be a renewable resource, the most effective inroad for me was eating well. So if you were in the first session, I articulated that our food is our first line of defense, right? And so we become what we eat. So the practice of cooking with medicine has been a muse for me. So as a chocolate maker, and I'm not a professional chocolate maker. I do it in a very folksy kind of a way. But it became really fascinating to me, this idea of mixing superfoods into the chocolate. And so that's what we're going to do a little bit of in our session today. So I've got things kind of at varying stages of the process, so that hopefully you can really get your sensibilities and your imagination and your watchful eyes around the whole thing, and feel ready to hit the ground running. When I post this on our website, I will also post a link to where I get my beautiful raw cacao from. So the story started a couple of years ago, 4 years ago. I spent a large part of my summer traveling around and learning in the South Central Andes of Peru, which was a beautiful transformational time. And when I set off on the expedition, one of my primary intentions, amongst other things, but one of the primary intentions was to learn about cacao. and to be able to have it be part of my repertoire and have it be part of my personal portfolio of nutrition and my portfolio of offerings to the people that I work with. And so I spent time in a lot of different places in the Andes, but I spent a large chunk of time in this amazing area called the Sacred Valley, in a very, very ancient old village called Pisac. If you ever have the opportunity to get there because it is a most remarkable trip back into time, and the set and setting of the mountains is just majestic, and the intactness of the indigenous culture there will just touch you to your very core. So I was in a small little cafe tucked away on a very, very rainy day, actually doing a little bit of painting, and had stepped outside for some fresh air. And along walked this lovely human being who spontaneously, out of nowhere, invited me to come learn how to make chocolate with him at 5 o'clock that day at a place called Apu. And I was like, absolutely, I'll be there. And so I did. I showed up at Apu and received the transmission that I'm about ready to share with you. And this beautiful man, Itamar, who is originally Moroccan, but then grew up in Israel, and he and his beautiful wife and children were living in Israel and decided to sell everything and to move to Costa Rica and to settle into an indigenous kind of lifestyle there. And they became cacao farmers and still do work with very closely with the Bri people, who have a long history of working with cacao as a medicine and ceremoniously and as a superfood. So I can assure you that if you click the link to buy your cacao from Cacao Magic Costa Rica, that you are going to get some of the best cacao on the planet. The integrity with which they produce their cacao is remarkable from start to finish, and there's no fire involved in the processing of this cacao, so it's not going to stimulate you as some chocolates will and do. And another fine feature of this cacao that I love so much is that they haven't gone about separating the cacao butter from the cacao, to sell off to the cosmetic industry or whatnot. They've left it all in the food so that you really get all of what it is that you can get from cacao when you consume this chocolate. So, the Aztecs and the Mayans, they refer to it as theobroma, which is fruit of the gods. And I love that. And I wish that you were all here in the room with me so I can actually, be feeding you samples while I teach you how to make this. But you'll have to trust me. And next time we're all together, live and in person, I'll be serving this. Courtney, I think the last time we were together, I had some of my cacao that I brought to that event, which seems like a small eternity ago. So here we have the examples, and I did some pre-work so that we can maximize our time. I'm going to move this water bath over here, and I want to show you. Actually, I'm going to change my mind and do a different course of events. First, I want to, let's start by mixing up a bowl. So, a lot of people that have tasted my chocolate through the past few years will have this sort of mystical air about them, like, oh my God, how do you do this? How do you make chocolate? And the whole reason I want to do this session today is I want to demystify it. I want you to see just how simple my personal approach to making this happens to be, okay? So that you can do it for yourself and your family. So what you're going to need here is a kitchen scale. So I'm going to turn the scale on, and I'm going to measure out of this. I've gone ahead and chunked up this rugged cacao into pieces so that it's really user-friendly. And I'm going to place it here onto my scale, and I'm going to get us up to 45 grams. So this is a really nice set of, a really nice recipe and equation for the parts. So we're almost there. One more little piece. All right, we just crossed the threshold. We've hit 45 grams. So I'm going to transfer the cacao to this little white porcelain bowl, and I'm going to set it to the side. Now, I know that I just mentioned that this cacao has cacao butter in it, but when you're making chocolate, you always want to add in some element of fat. I'm a huge fan of just the straight, pure superfood of the cacao butter, so I actually add a little bit more of that, and what that's going to do is it's going to really create that silken texture, which we all love when we're eating chocolate, right? So we have the 45 grams of the cacao here, and so I would like 20 grams of fat. You can explore working with different fats. You could add, you could use coconut manna, you could use coconut oil, you could, you can really get crafty with this, but in terms of texture, I have become really devoted to just sticking with this as my baseline because it works and it's delicious every time. All right, so we just hit 20. So I'm gonna transfer my cacao butter to the bowl, and I'm going to close that up. So I mentioned that these beautiful little hearts here are made of mint and maca and moringa, and I also mentioned that I like to mix these superfoods into my chocolate. So for those of you who may not be familiar with moringa, now is the perfect time to start developing a friendship with it. Moringa is its origin, its home it's originally growing it has been growing in India and in Africa and in parts of Asia, and it really is an incredible green that has all kinds of benefits for us healthfully, and it really is delicious. And so here you can see in this little dish that we have this beautiful green. It looks like, if any of you drink matcha tea, it looks just like matcha. In fact, my daughter roamed down from her morning studies just a moment ago and was like, "Oh, are you making chocolate with matcha?" And I said, "No, that's moringa." So they really do look very similar. So we're going to add the moringa to this bowl. So here I have just a 1 teaspoon spoon, and I like to do about, for this 45 gram quantity, I like to do about 2 teaspoons of the moringa. So rocket ship from Africa and Asia and India, from the moringa over to the Andes Mountains, and here we have maca. So this is a beautiful root. So we've got leaf and root going into this chocolate recipe. Maca has an incredible, also just like a panoply of good things that it does for us. It's used very commonly to build stamina, to create a proficiency in our energy. It's used for all kinds of fertility issues. It can be utilized for increasing libido. And again, the list is long, but just know that maca is also a good one to develop a friendship with. And it has this incredible sort of nutty, I dare say almost even butterscotchy flavor. I really love making drinking chocolate, and I'll use some almond milk as my base, and I'll melt the cacao into the almond milk very slowly, whisking it circularly, and I'll add some of this maca to it. So good. So, okay, I'm going to add also 2 teaspoons of this maca to our melting bowl. And then here we have some cacao nibs. These are some awesome cacao nibs that I brought back actually just a couple of months ago from a recent trip to Belize. And I love these. They're amazing, and I just have a few left. I've been really stretching them out in a very mindful manner. So here we have some cacao nibs, and I'm going to add them also to our mixing bowl. I'm also going to add a little pinch of sea salt. Not too much though. I don't like it to be too salty, just a little tiny bit. And then, so we've got maca and moringa, and we've got the cacao nibs, and now I'm going to add a little bit of peppermint essence, okay? So you never want to heat it directly. I'm going to double boil this in a really casual way. I don't have any sort of, elite equipment for doing this. I just use a big ceramic bowl, and I'm going to take my mixing bowl, my melting bowl, and place it right in the center. And I'm going to grab a small plate to cover the small mixing bowl, and I'm nestling it all in. Now, I've pre-boiled our water, and I'm going to enjoy the pour. I'm going to fill it up. So it's really, really important that you keep the water the entire time out of the bowl that contains the ingredients, because if the water comes in contact with the cacao, it's going to change up the alchemy of the whole thing, which is not what we're after. Okay? So I'm feeling like it's pretty ready. I'm going to set my teapot aside. Grab a larger plate. I'm going to transition the melting double boiling bowl over to the stove to sit for a little while. And I'm going to cover it so that it can do its thing. So that takes, generally, it depends on if you're doing a small quantity. Sometimes, so I give you the 45, 20. Oh, and we're going to add sugar. I'm going to add Manuka honey, but we're not going to do that until the end, so that it doesn't, get too melty. You can also explore the different sugars that you use. I really like the Manuka honey because it's got all kinds of medicinal properties within it as well, and texturally it's just absolutely beautiful when you're making the chocolate. Sometimes I use coconut sugar, which gives it a kind of rustic, granulated quality. You may enjoy doing that. I've also explored just using like a baseline classic granulated sugar. I've also explored using brown sugar. And if you're a big fan, or even a mild fan of not sweetened chocolate, you could just eliminate the sugar altogether and just go for the straight heart medicine of the cacao without any sugar at all. So lots of options in that way. Okay, so we'll wait on adding that. So I'm going to push our scale to the side. So let's chat about molds for a minute. Lots of molds on the marketplace, and you can have some fun for yourself acquiring a little collection. Some of the last presents that my father gave me before he passed on were some chocolate molds. So this being one of them, and this being one of them. And I'm seeing that there's just a little bit of dust on this chocolate mold, and I want to wipe it off. Okay. So here we have a heart, here we have a square, and then you can have a lot of fun with bars. I wish I have a few different kinds of bar molds. So this is how I actually made our ashwagandha and rose chocolate bar this morning, out of these bar molds. But you can just start with one, one shape that you feel an affinity with, and if you find yourself really becoming a chocolate maker, you can develop a collection slowly over time. So they're found all over the place, and you can easily order them and include them, add them to your kitchen collection. So now I'm going to bring this back over. So here we have another double boiling situation that I started before I opened this call to join everyone. Now as I take the cacao and all of the ingredients out of the water bath, I'm going to be super attentive to not, like I said, to not getting any water in the mixing bowl. So here you can see it's just very much like it looked a minute ago when we just added the ingredients, but now it's just a little bit more, viscous. So I'm going to grab a fork and I'm going to whisk it up. So I've made just a basic recipe for this batch. So, you know, here we have a lot of fancy blends that include the superfoods that I love, that help us to experience, you know, an elevated mood, to have healthy skin and healthy hair, to have a healthy heart and a healthy nervous system. But sometimes I just keep it really simple, and so that's what we have here. And so for this batch, I've actually crushed up some pecans and put a little pecan piece, about a half a piece, into each one of these little molds. We may or may not have enough chocolate to fill the entire mold. We're about ready to find out. So I whisk it up with the fork gently until it's evident that it's all homogenized. And this is just like brown gold, right? You don't want to waste a single drop of it. So I like to spoon it in. And here in a moment's time, we're going to use this adorable little, have you ever seen a spatula this small? So sweet, so much fun to use. I like to use a spoon at the beginning, and then to make sure that I don't, you know, waste any of this brown gold, I'm going to use that spatula in a second. And then I'm just going to fill each one of these little compartments in the mold with the fluid cacao. Now, maybe you can see, I'm not sure if you can see, that I have the chocolate mold on this silver tray. I always stabilize these silicone molds, which are very flexible. I stabilize them on a metal tray first, so that when I transfer them to the refrigerator to cool, that I'm not going to jeopardize the integrity of the way things are starting to set up, okay? And so then I'm just going to keep doing this until all the cacao is in the mold. Little kitchen meditation. So just a straight, clean cacao recipe with a little bit of pecan is really nice. So many different recipes I've explored. You can include nut butters, you can add citrus zest, you can add candied ginger, you can add dried fruit, you can add, one of my favorites is to add chili and cayenne and cinnamon and make a really sort of traditional spicy Mayan chocolate, which is incredibly activating and awakening for the consciousness and the mind. So we're almost there. I figured it would make just over half a batch. So I want to really encourage you to get playful, and I hope that you do this at home. To consume cacao on the daily is really, really good for your health. So I'm just going to get all the rest of this transferred in. I'm going to use the spatula to also include any of those drips on the side, bars there in between, also into the container. And this stuff sets up pretty fast. I'm going to transfer. I usually, put it in the fridge for at least 20 minutes, sometimes a little bit more if I'm really, really busy. But it sets up pretty fast. So I'm going to step out of the screen and pop it into the fridge. So there you have it. Here we are in Sitalisa'S kitchen, and there you have a few ideas and a base recipe and an experiential tutorial for making cacao candy, because it has sugar, but it also has the supplemental superfoods included in it. I hope that this has been inspiring for you and hopefully insightful for you. Before I let you go, I just want to check in on this. My guess is that it's not fully melted, but I just wanted to articulate that, before I pour this batch off into its molds, it still needs to melt for some time. I would add that Manuka honey, okay? So I'm going to give you some suggestions in terms of recipes and combinations when I make the post on the Integrative Practices site within the next probably 48 hours. But it's been such fun to feel you here. Thank you for being here. And thank you for taking in these moments of sharing around something that has been very dear to me and that I've loved sharing with groups and with individuals through the past many years. And if you do bring cacao into your life, let me know how it is making your heart happy. Thank you so much for being here today, friends. Sat Nam. Namaste.